My name is Don Ash. I'm in Murfreesboro today, May 15, 2006, to interview Chancellor Whitney Stegall. This interview is taking place as part of the Legal History Project of the Fellows of the Tennessee Bar Foundation. Chancellor, if you'd be kind enough to tell us your full name and your full date of birth.
Whitney Stegall, February the 17th, 1916.
And I think Chancellor, and let me say, to ask your permission to call you Chancellor in Rutherford County.
Call me Whitney.
Okay, I'll try to call you Whitney. But when I first started practicing, you were our Chancellor, so I'm used to calling you Chancellor. But I'll try to call you. I'll try to call you Whitney. Whitney, you were raised in Rockville. Is that right?
That's correct.
Could you kind of tell me about your family history, like your grandparents? Were they originally from Rockville?
On both sides. My mother was a love, Nanny May Love. She was a school teacher. She taught in Louisiana, in Tennessee, in Cookeville, and came home one time and met my father, and they got married. His name was B.D., or Benjamin Duggan Stegall. He was a farmer at that time. He became a merchant. And
what did he sell as a merchant?
Junk.
Did he?
He really did. He sold lots of junk. He once ran a grocery store till 1929 when some of his personnel decided that they ought to take home a bit of money every once in a while. And one of them had a grandfather that was running a peddling wagon. My father ran 2 peddling wagons, and the grandfather came to Daddy with a sack of money, $50, and he said, my grandson has these hidden in the barn, and I found them and I know they're yours. Well, that contributed, of course, to his going broke in 1929. I
didn't mention, I know where Rockville is and you do, but could you kind of tell the people that are listening to our interview where Rockville is?
Well, it's southwest of Murfreesboro by 10 miles then. It's a little bit shorter now, but it's southwest of Murfreesboro. Rockville is between Murfreesboro and Eagleville, and both of them got high schools about the same time. So it was a tremendous conflict between the students in the ball games. We played basketball and baseball, and that's about all, but we had some marble games.
Could you talk about growing up in Rockville a little bit?
You don't grow up in Rockville. I'm very painful about that because we milked cows, and I had to milk by hand. I milked 16 cows night and morning when I was a senior in high school. But other than that, you work every day that you can, Saturday and Sunday, including the milking of the cows. They have to be milked every day. And it's an unbelievable task, and I can understand why Rutherford County gradually lost herds. We don't have but 2-3 herds left in Rutherford County. We were once the leading county in the United States, so the Chamber of Commerce said, and I believe them.
Was there a Rockville Elementary School? Is that where you went to elementary school?
Oh, yes. First grade through the 8th grade. Then I went to Central High School in Murfreesboro 1 year, and that's 1929 when my father went broke. And we didn't have any funds left to buy gasoline to drive in with.
And then was there Rockville High School?
Yes, yes. Oh, it was, this county had 11 high schools at one time. Some of them didn't have enough students to keep the teachers involved. It was so small, but we had 11 high schools. I could name them at one time, but I hope you don't ask me to do that.
And tell me about going to high school at Rockville and playing Eagleville. Did you play them in basketball or football, or what was your experiences there?
Now, I'm not an athlete, but I did finally make the basketball team. We played basketball, and everybody in Eagleville and Rockville turned out for those games, no matter where they were played.
Now, I think you told me that your family had was this a family farm that y'all were working on?
Well, my father had a farm which he lost in 1929, and my mother had one left, and finally she gave in and signed the mortgage, and we managed to stay there. That's where my father had built a house, and that was on his father-in-law's land that he had built the house. And we got a strip of ground on both sides of the Rockville to Eagleville Road, and that is our farm. I think it's 120 acres, something like that.
And besides running dairy cattle, did you do anything else on the farm?
Oh yeah, yes. I picked cotton until I found out what it was like. I could pick cotton all day and get 50 pounds in a sack. And after that, I'd beg my father to assign me to some other task other than picking cotton. You pick cotton, it gets under your cuticles. Every bowl that you pull out somehow gets a stick in your cuticle, and your fingers get awful sore picking cotton.
And did he pay you for doing that, or was that just part of being his son?
Oh, it's just part of it. His work, everybody there worked. Now, my mother didn't go to the field, but my sisters helped milk cows at one stage.
Well, I was going to ask you, I think you've got some brothers and sisters. Could you kind of tell us about them and what they did on the farm to help the family?
Well, May Love is my oldest sister, and Adeline, Adelyn, is my youngest. May Love died in November of '98, and she was a great one to take old garments such as a suit and make her a suit out of it. She could do sewing work wonderfully. And I left home before Adeline matured to that point, but she could sew a little. And they both were great cooks.
And then you had a brother, is it Goodwin?
Goodwin Fountain Stegall now. Goodwin was named, the Fountain part was for my grandfather Love, who was Fountain Love, Fountain P. Love, in fact.
Now, during those days on the farm when you were working the dairy barn, did your sisters and brothers come out there and help you, or did they just let you do all the work?
Goodwin helped with the milking. Now, I don't know why he didn't milk cows my senior year in high school, but he didn't. He must have been sick about something, or sick, and I got the task of milking them all. My father worked to the extent that he could, but he had been injured in San Francisco earlier in life and developed bronchiectasis and was terribly stooped. He bent over almost even with the ground. And he was very limited physically, but he had lots of drive when he looked at you.
And how long does it take to milk 16 cows in the morning, hand milking them?
I wasn't timing it. I just had to start early enough so I could get to school. School wasn't but a half a mile, maybe less, from our house after they got it built in 1927. But it doesn't take too long. I'd say an hour.
And then what was the process after that? Was there a place you'd take it in Murfreesboro to get it pasteurized or whatever they do to milk?
We separated it, it is known as, and you turn a handle like this, machine separator was about that tall, but you had a handle to turn, and you separated the cream from the skim milk. And the cream we sold, we poured it in a 5-gallon can and sold it early on in our life. But it was a very productive process in that it kept us alive. It gave us something to eat.
During that time, Chancellor, and I know you were working on the farm and going to school, did you have any other part-time jobs, or probably no time for any other work?
Well, in the summertime, I worked in hayfields. That paid at that time 75 cents a day. And then other jobs on the farm, I would work for 50 cents a day.
And that, I assume,
the deal was to be in the field at sunup and leave at sundown for those enormous bits of pay. I don't know why I'm coughing, so well, go ahead.
Sure. And then after that, is that when you decided to go to college?
Oh, we were born directed by both of our parents and our aunt who lived with us that we had to go to college. And education was heard from the time we were old enough to hear it and understand what they were talking about until we all got through college.
So how were your grades in high school? Did you make good grades?
I didn't discuss that with you. I thought I told you not to ask those questions of me. I passed.
Okay, good. That's fine. And then, right after graduation from high school, is that when you started going to MTSU?
Yes.
And MTSU is tell me what it was called then.
MTSC is Middle Tennessee State Teachers College. And
you remember about what year that was that you went there?
1933. I'll never forget it.
How do you remember 1933?
I graduated from high school and went to Murfreesboro to school. I was 17, and I got to Murfreesboro, and I liked the streets of Murfreesboro, and I stayed rather than milk cows.
Sure. And then, when you came to Murfreesboro, where did you live when you were going to college?
Oh, my. I lived with Ms. McCoy the first year. I was her janitor. She lived at 400 and something College Street. The house is still there. And for supper, I was the janitor for Aunt Beth Farrell, who ran a boarding house on the corner, and that house is still standing on the corner of Highland and the next street over going north.
Did you have to pay rent, or was that just included in your janitorial?
That was for my janitorial services. And I ate lunch, either peanut butter and crackers, or bought it in the cafeteria at MTSC.
Where'd you live the second year?
I lived at Woodfin and Moore. That was a funeral home, and I worked some as a driver, not an extensive amount, because most of the long trips and there were several. I mean, from here to Nashville was a long trip for me, but I worked for Woodfin Moore for 3 years before I graduated.
Now, Woodfin Moore is a funeral home.
That's right.
And so what were all your job responsibilities at the funeral home? What all did you do there?
Well, I drove ambulances and hearses and went on funerals as an assistant. And occasionally they'd let me embalm somebody.
I heard you sang at some funerals. Is that true?
No, Don, your memory is too good. My mother told me, Whitney, don't let anybody ever hear you try to sing, 'cause you can't carry a tune. But John Woodfin and I went on a funeral. I don't know where it was, but it was east of Murfreesboro. Not due east, but east toward Manchester, out there somewhere. And Uncle Dave Macon's son was a member of the congregation, and John asked him to sing a song, and he said he would if somebody would help him. And John chose me and put me up there singing with Dave Macon's, I think, oldest son. At any rate, then John had a coughing spell in the back of the church and got up and went out. See, I knew what his problem was because he could understand a tune, and I don't know what a tune is.
Was that the last time you sang at a funeral?
That's the only time I ever sang at a funeral.
And at Woodfin's, you worked there for, was it a year or 2 years?
3.
So you
3
finished your
years
career
till I graduated.
And at MTCS, that's our Middle
MTSC.
Tennessee State, right? What did you study?
Chemistry and biology and math. Those were my majors and minors. Chemistry was my major. Biology was my second one. I had 36 hours in biology and 18 in math. Those were comparatively easy subjects for me, but
what made you pick that? Pick
I
that line
wanted
of
to
study?
be a doctor. That was my intention from the time of childhood, to be a doctor. I liked that, and
so you graduated from MTSU, from Middle Tennessee State College Teachers.
yeah,
You graduated from there,
1937.
and then you didn't go straight to law school. You went straight to work, right?
I taught school at Smyrna for 2 years, chemistry and biology for 2 years, coached 2 girls' basketball teams, taught the 8th grade arithmetic. So I was busy every period of the day teaching, even during lunch hour when the girls' basketball teams practiced, and so I made $75 a month there. That's better than 50 cents a day, I'll have you know. And Ms. Johnson would give me lunch. She lived right across the street from the schoolhouse. If I could take it with me, and if I had time, I usually took some with me.
Well, what happened to the wanting to go to med school? What made you decide to get off the med school path and go teach school in Smyrna?
I didn't decide. I was simply looking for money when I started.
And so teaching school for 2 years, how did that experience help you later on in life, or did it?
I enjoyed teaching very much, especially the children I enjoyed. And I went to the Army. I was drafted after I was 25 for World War II.
I thought that you went to and you're going to have to help me with the initials, the CCC. Was that before you went into the Army?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Tell me about that.
Well, you see, I got tired of $75 a month. And so I learned about CCC, and they had educational advisors, 2 or 3. Woodrow Smitherman was one of them. He was a big football player. He was an educational advisor with the CCC. So I spent one summer hitchhiking from Rockville to Port Oglethorpe to apply for a job, and I'd go every week, and they'd say to me, "Well, we like you, but you're too young." And my only comeback, which I didn't think of until later in my application period, I said, "Time will take care of that," and it has.
And what does the CCC stand for?
Civilian Conservation Corps. And I was assigned, I'm skipping some in there, I was assigned to 497, that was a camp in Athens, Tennessee, as educational advisor.
Well, I was going to ask you what you did.
I was really the principal of the school there, but in addition to that, I taught some reading, writing, and arithmetic, beekeeping, gardening, everything that I could get a teacher for. Now, the Forest Service was an organization that worked the enrollees of the CC camp in the daytime, and then they would come home about 3 o'clock in the afternoon and clean up and get ready for chow time. And then after chow time, they'd go to school. And we tried to fit them all into a school program. In addition to my other college courses, I learned and taught industrial arts, and I had a big class of that kind, and that's the one that I really taught. But the Forest Service furnished personnel also to teach, and they'd teach 1, 2, maybe 3 nights a week if they got going good.
Could you give me a history lesson and tell me what the CCC was and why it was created?
Well, Roosevelt, and he was really the savior of America, and he won World War II by using the CCCs as personnel that was already trained to drive various and sundry types of vehicles and do everything except shoot a gun. A cook, office manager, senior enrollee, learned to type, and
so this was created to help create jobs during the Depression. Is that?
That's right. That's right.
And so you help teach people other job skills, I guess. Is that
Yeah,
is that right?
tried to.
And were these people that you taught, were they paid by the government, or how did they earn their keep?
They earned $30 a month. They got 5 of it, and the 25 was sent home to their parents. And there were about 200 enrollees in every camp. And there were 42 different camps in District C, headquarters in Fort Oglethorpe, Georgia. Oh, there were thousands, I don't know how many thousand, over the United States. But if you had told me you wanted to know about it, I might have been able to bring a document describing it better than I have done.
How many camps did you get to work in?
Well, it depends. After so many of the officers, you see, it was run, the CC camp was run by a lieutenant and a subaltern, and the fire service personnel for daytime. And I worked in that one. Then when these company commanders and subalterns were called into the Army, they all had first, second. Some had captains that were called into the Army. I was called into District C when the Assistant District Education Advisor and the District Education Advisor were both called in. I was called in a month before the assistant went, and I became Assistant District Education Advisor. Then we got a new District Education Advisor from somewhere in Georgia. He had his doctorate from someplace I don't remember. His name was Haig. But he came in and didn't know anything at all about the 42 camps or the education advisors. So I was there when he got there, and I at least knew the workings of the office and what to do, so I helped him for 5 or 6 months.
Now, sometime you got promoted from educational advisor to a company commander.
Yes, I was just about to tell you about that.
Go ahead.
Well, one day the district education advisor, who didn't know any of the education advisors, any of them except me, that happened to be there in the office. The old man who was downstairs, he is the company commander, district commander, sent a memorandum upstairs and said, rate the education advisors. So the district education advisor came over and said, here, you do this. And I said, I shouldn't do that. I objected strenuously, but he insisted, you're the only one here that knows them, and I've got to rate them. I said, well, will you decide whatever I rate? And he said, yes. Well, the order was to rate 3, and I rated James Campbell, whom you doubtless know. He was principal at Rockvale before I became an education advisor. And a fellow named Fox, who I don't really remember the full name of. And then I put Whitney Stegall on there. And I rated 3, and about a week went by, and I got an order to report to Camden, Tennessee as company commander. And I took over the company of 200 enrollees at Camden, Tennessee. And I was there for about a year, and then we closed down.
And what do you do as company commander? What were your responsibilities?
Keep all the records on all the boys. Of course, you had office help, personnel that's chosen out of the ranks, and they could type, and they could add, and I kept all the records, bought all the food for the entire camp with an allotment of money, and I usually bought it at one place that made it simpler.
And so that ended around May of 1942. Then you got another promotion.
Well, that camp closed down in Camden, and I was ordered to go to Stevenson, Alabama. And I went there and reported about the 1st of May, 1942. And one morning I couldn't sleep, so I got up, took a shower, put on a full uniform. We had a uniform, a beautiful green uniform, and we had black ties to wear with it. And I put on a clean uniform and went to the office to close out the books. This is on May the 30th or 31st. And I heard a racket at the front door of the office just as I had finished the books, closed them up. And I stood up, and as I stood up, the old man, drunker than Cootie Brown, came through the front door.
Now, the old man, do you mean is that somebody in charge?
That's the head man from Fort Oglethorpe.
Okay.
And he said, "What in the hell are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, sir, I just closed out the books for the month of May." And he looked at me for a minute or two, and he said, "You mean to tell me you don't have anything to do for the next month except walk around and see if everybody's doing their job?" And I said, "Yes, sir, that's right, because I've got these books closed out." He said, "Well, you go to Port Oglethorpe and see Sin," that's S-I-N-N. He was the adjutant general. "Tell him to give you a car and give you an assignment to inspect the various camps." And I got one, trying to make it simple. I got one, but I go to sleep easily. And one day I felt sleepy driving, and I went to the side of the road and went to sleep. And the old man, still drunk, he was a great drinker, caught me sitting between here and Birmingham, Alabama somewhere, and he bawled me out. He said, "You turn around now, go back to see Sin and tell him to get you a driver." And he sent me, Sin sent me to 497 with orders for them to give me a driver. And Murphy was my assigned driver. He was a veteran of the First World War. And he was a great fellow. Stayed sober most of the time, but he drove me from then on as I was sub-district inspector, and I went from camp to camp. We were snowbound once in Cades Cove. They had a camp up there, and we stayed there about 2 weeks. He stole everything that was not touched down there and put it in the trunk of the car. We took it to a Methodist preacher named Jones, who was preaching down at the foot of the mountain. So we had a great time.
And every place y'all went and inspected, was he kind of known for that he would kind of take the pick of the litter at every one of these camps you went to?
Oh, he got along with everybody. Nobody would have rattled on him. He was a great fella.
And so, Chancellor, during this time, this is the very early 1940s, there was something else big going on.
42.
Something big going on in the world, wasn't there?
Yes. The war was going on, and there I was just riding around from camp to camp and having a great time. But we were finally closed down sometime along about the 1st of July, and Murphy drove me to Macomb, Mississippi. I think that's the name, where I turned in the car, and all of the money, I don't know how much it was, all of the money that District C had in its till. I had a reputation of being honest in handling the money. And so I took all the money, and Murphy drove me to Macomb, Mississippi. And I turned in the car and all of the money there. And James Campbell and Captain Johnson, he was the company commander for the CCC also, were there at the same time. And we caught the train and went to New Orleans. That's the first time I ever was in New Orleans. We went from bar to bar, is the truth, until I finally said, boys, I've got to have something to eat. Well, we'll go in the next restaurant. And we went into Two Jack's restaurant. It's still in New Orleans, I think. And you could get all you could eat for $1. And I ate enough to where I could walk like a sober fella, at any rate. Then I went home.
That's what I was going to ask. After your trip to New Orleans, then you come back to Rockville or Murfreesboro?
Rockville.
And then, did you anticipate that you were going to get drafted, or were you going to sign up?
Oh, I knew I was going to get drafted. Yeah. I reported to the People's Depot in Murfreesboro on the 8th of August, and we rode John Bragg and a number of other people that I knew got on that train. There were 110 of us, and after we got on, here came Grandma Ridley, who was the master of the drafting, with the records, and he said, "Here, Whitney, you're in charge." And he gave me all those records. Well, some fella said to me after he left, "You don't want to handle them, do you?" "No, I don't." Well, he said, "Give them to me." So I gave them to him. And then we got together on this train, and I faxed, I reckon is the term for it. I can't think of it. On the railroad, you could send a message ahead to the next. Mm-hmm. And I sent a message to a friend of mine to buy us lunch. And I specified what we wanted for lunch, every one of us that were in that car. And he met us at the train and gave me that package, and we went on to Fort Oglethorpe. We got there at nighttime. That's how long it took on that train. And
so about how old were you, Chancellor, when you first got there?
25.
And who all was in the train with you? Was John Bragg with you?
Yeah.
And John Bragg is a former state representative and just a real leader in the
our best one. The best man we ever sent to the legislature, I'll have you know. John had a limitation, as you doubtless know, 3 fingers. He had a finger and a thumb left, but he was a great ball player. He played basketball for MTSU.
And then, Chancellor, so were you drafted into the Army or Navy, or which branch of the service?
Well, I had tried to join the Navy because I didn't want to walk. But the doctor was so smart with me that I just turned around and walked out of the Navy office, and I was drafted into the Army by Granville Ridley.
And so you go to Fort Oglethorpe. Where do they send you next, or what happens at Oglethorpe?
We had to have our physical examination, and if you passed, and all you had to do was be able to see the wall over there, and you could pass. Of course, there's another step in there. But we all passed except one, and he went back home to Rockvale, and he milked by hand with his brother 100 cows all during the war. I know that because he was related to me, distantly, but related to me.
So did you go in as a private?
Yeah. Huh.
And then what happened?
I don't know how you get in the Army without being a private. Well, they gave us exams, and then they said to me and a few others, you can pick out where you want to go. And I picked out New Jersey, Fort Monmouth, New Jersey, and I went there. They had a officers training school. I couldn't think of the initials of that. They had one there, and they sent me through. One thing I had to do during that 6 months was to march enrollees 25 miles away back to camp. And I was in charge, and you have to examine their feet every so many miles and see if anybody's needing an ambulance, and if so, the ambulance is following you. And I remember one boy, he just wasn't getting along very well. He was struggling every step, and I'd been trying to get him to drop out and go for the ambulance, and he wouldn't do it.
Now, was this in Fort Oglethorpe, or was this in New Jersey?
This is in Fort Oglethorpe,
okay,
where I had selected to go so I could get into the Signal Corps OCS, that's Officers Training
And what
School.
do you do at the Signal Corps?
Well, that was one of the things was march. You know, you have to learn to march in the Army. March them 25 miles and get there in time to eat supper.
Mm-hmm.
And you had to inspect them at least every 5 miles. Their feet, see if everything was all right, see if they could fall out.
So how long were you in New Jersey at Officer Training School?
6
Officer
months.
Candidate School, 6 months.
Yeah. I graduated March the 6th, 1943.
What was the toughest part about going through that school?
Wasn't tough at all because I had taught as assistant district education advisor. I had taught all the manuals that the Army had, and so I just wrote down the answers and went on. Well, I did catch the flu and passed out, and I knew if they sent me to the hospital, I'd be ruled out of that class. So I went back to bed after I passed out, and they hunted all over the camp, and I mean that part of the barrack we were in for the fellow that had passed out in the bathroom, and I wouldn't tell them that I was it. So we went to a field process the following day, and they were looking for drivers that could drive, and I was assigned to a car. By taking the bandage off of my arm, it identified me, and I drove a first lieutenant around for this field exercise all day and slept in the cab of the truck all night. And
going back to sleeping in the car again, like you did when you were in the CCC.
Yeah. I got by without getting kicked out with the flu, but I made it. And I reckon those tricks I learned while in the CCC. At any rate, I made it.
And so what happened after you get out of officer training school?
Sent me to Tampa, Florida, and I got down there. There were 122 second lieutenants with nothing to do. So.
Were you a second lieutenant then?
Oh yeah. Yeah, when I graduated from OCS, I was a second lieutenant. So I started a class for the privates and the sergeants that were there to teach them from these manuals. And I wrote to the one colonel that was the district educational advisor, and told him where I was in the Army, and I said, if you'll get me out of here, I'll be eternally grateful to you. I don't care where you send me, but get me out of here. The mosquitoes were absolutely eating me up. And I was assigned to San Francisco. It just happened. For a whole year, I was out there working in a CCC, in a Army CCC operation for training films and so on. I learned how to run a projector and all those things. And then I got kicked out of there. I won't tell you that story. And I got kicked out of there and sent back to New Jersey to go to England. And I drew my winter clothing to go to England. And then I got orders to turn in my winter clothing and go to San Francisco for the Southwest Pacific. They didn't tell me where I was going.
Now, Pearl Harbor, though, happened while you were with the CCC. Is that right?
41,
right.
2. Yeah,
do you remember where you were when you first heard about Pearl Harbor?
Yeah, I was between Nashville and Camden, Tennessee, going downhill, driving my own car. And the thought crossed my mind, if I'd just run into this bridge down here at the foot, I could see it. I wouldn't have to serve. And
was there a lot of fear, though, in San Francisco when you were there that the country was going to be attacked?
Oh, no. No, I would say no, but they had big guns all around, everywhere. But I wasn't in the ordnance then. I think that's the name of handling those big guns.
And so you go back to New Jersey from San Francisco.
I went from San Francisco to New Jersey, and then from New Jersey back to San Francisco, if you can imagine that travel. And I was the advanced cadre for the outfit that I was going to take to the Southwest Pacific. And
how did you travel? Did you
take train?
By train.
Everything by train. And you walk that train day in and out. It's awful to ride a train straight through from one coast to the other.
Can you remember how long it took?
3 days or 3 nights. It was 3 days anyway. But finally they all got there. I was advanced cadre, which means you're advanced party for the whole outfit that's coming. So we got all the things that we were supposed to have picked up in San Francisco and loaded onto a ship on December the 1st, 1943. It took us 25 days to get to land out in the Pacific. and we were going to New Guinea. And the southern tip of New Guinea is, well, I've forgotten the name of it, but it's a little town down there. It's a port. And we pulled in there, but they wouldn't let us off. And it took us around to
Now, this is the time when MacArthur was around, isn't it?
yeah, he was moving from protection down in Australia. I've forgotten where he was in Australia, but he started out the most southern point of Australia. And then he came to the second stop. I've forgotten all the names.
Sure.
I'm sorry.
Well, your first stop though is at this island where they wouldn't let y'all unload, or
wouldn't let us unload. Took us around to Asmillan Bay.
Now, was this on a destroyer? Was this on a ship, I guess?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I could rattle those names off till I got here. Let's take a break.
Okay. All right. Well, let me say just a couple. Let me ask you just one more thing, Chancellor.
Okay.
In regard to that war experience, when was the first time you saw combat? And we'll take a break right after you answer this question. When was the first time you saw combat when you got to the South Pacific?
I never saw combat, is the truth. The guns were somewhere else. I was back here. And I never was shot at. I never shot at anyone. Right. I was in a process one time where Captain Neufeld shot a Japanese who was crossing in front of us and killed him. I was in the cars, jeeps behind him. He stood up and shot that man, killed him, and we drove on through to Manila, but that's another story.
All right, what we'll do is we'll go ahead and take our break, and we'll start back in just a few minutes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Chancellor, when we ended, or before we took our break, we were talking about your involvement in World War II, and I think you were in the South Pacific.
In the southernmost point of New Guinea is where we stopped, and we went around when they wouldn't let us off the ship there. We went around to the next town that I can't remember the name of, and then we moved on to the second town where they had coconut groves, and we unloaded on Christmas Eve night, all night, so the ship could be back at sea the next morning.
Was that 1944?
No, 1943.
43.
The Japs were everywhere then. You know, they were really making progress. And MacArthur went up to Hollandia while we were making our last move. And he got to Hollandia at the same time that we had unloaded. Then we stayed there for a few days, and we got orders to move up to Hollandia. And we got all of our equipment that had been offloaded from the ship and moved to Hollandia. And we, the men, built a shed there to put the equipment in. And we were well situated when we got orders to start moving northward. I call it northward because we had to go from there to Biak, Biak to Leyte, and Leyte to Luzon, and we ended up on Luzon at Manila.
Now, is that where you got injured?
Well, I got injured there, but it was 6 months anyway, maybe a year later, after the war was over, my injury occurred.
So the war had ended, and you were still in the service when you got hurt.
Oh yeah.
And can you briefly tell us about your war injury?
Well, we had a headquarters for film exchange. That's what I was in charge of at that point. Now, we'd had other people that were in charge that they had moved on, but I was in charge of the film exchange. It was in a 3-story building, and Billy Shoulders, I don't know whether you know him or not, but he was a great soldier, had stolen somehow 3 or 4 or 5 Jeeps, and we had a gasoline dump, and a Filipino set it afire using his cigarette lighter, set a little bucket of fire. So I was trying to help put it out. I was coming down the steps from the 3rd floor of the office on the 3rd floor to go to MacArthur's headquarters to get orders to go to Japan. And I never got there. The gasoline dump blew, and I was sprayed with burning gasoline. Fortunately, I had my backside to it, but it burned me from here down to the top of my shoes. And I was taken to the hospital.
And how long were you in the hospital?
18 months.
And after the 18 months, did you get to come home then?
Oh no, I was sent to San Francisco by plane on a airplane strapped down, along with the others. Some of them were incompetents that had lost their brain power.
Sure.
And I was strapped down, and we flew from there to Guam, from Guam to Hawaii.
When you were in the hospital that 18 months, was it just one hospital, or did you go to different ones?
No, I was taken off the plane in Hawaii and spent a couple of days in the hospital there. And a doctor worked on me the entire time. I had congested bowel problems by that time, and he got me where I was able to make it to San Francisco. Then they offloaded me into a tent with wax rotating on.
Now, wax, are they nurses?
Yeah. Well, they weren't qualified nurses. They were just wax.
Okay.
That nursed. And I was there for 3 or 4 days. From there to San Diego, where the burn center for the western part of the United States was located. I was there for 3 or 4 days, and they never did find a room or a bed for me. So they shipped me from there to Chickasha, Oklahoma, Borden General Hospital. And I got there. There's an incident I want to tell you about. While there, see, they were doing all this graft work on me. And my back and belly healed, and they could take skin off of both, and they'd cut one side or the other to put on my legs. My legs were the worst burned. And so I was there in bed one day, and the head nurse, whom I knew, she was a major, she came in and she says, "Who are you?" And I said, "Oh, Whitney." And she said, "I don't mean that, I mean, who are you?" Oh, she was mad. And so I gave her my name, rank, and serial number. I was a captain by that time. And she said, "Who do you know in the United States that it causes me to redo the operating schedule for this hospital every time you need a little piece of skin put on you. And I said, I don't have any idea. Nobody knows in the United States that I'm here. And finally, I convinced her that I didn't know. I knew Doc Earthman, who was the congressman then. Doc and I are very distantly related. And I convinced her that I hadn't pulled any rank or done anything. And she left, but she was still mad about having to redo the operating schedule. But those things happen. I was in Chickasha, Oklahoma, at the Borden General Hospital for until March the next year.
And what happened then? Where'd you go after
I was
that?
sent to Phoenixville, Pennsylvania. It was a general hospital for burns. And the boys that were there, those that were holding on to the stick,
That's okay. So these are fellas that got hurt. Was it flying airplanes?
yeah.
Yeah.
And their hands would scar tissue, and I'm talking about between every finger.
Sure.
Their fingers were woven together.
And so that was in Pennsylvania? And so you went to Pennsylvania, and after you got to see all the doctors there and all that, did you get to come back home then?
Well, yeah, but that was when they had to cut my legs in various places to give me relief. You see, my legs got to be about that size, and the skin
Won't stretch.
won't stretch.
Sure.
And they had to cut my legs and my knee and so on to give me liberty to walk. And that was where I got my majority, lying in bed.
I understand. Well, now people tell me, though, when you got back to Rockville, they didn't slow you down any, that you were still at the swimming pool or swimming hole, that you came back home.
Yeah, I came back to Rockville and came down to Vanderbilt to apply.
To law school?
Yeah, but I was on crutches, and I got there.
Why did you do the law school instead of going to medical school?
The doctors had convinced me at Phoenixville, Pennsylvania, that my legs wouldn't take it. I think they would have now as I look back on it, but I think I had good enough grades at MTSC to admit me to med school, but I never did go, never tried to. I had taken exams up in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania, and they said you ought to do something. Well, they really recommended that I do welfare work, but I chose law school, and I'm glad I did. I've had a great time.
And so then you go to Vanderbilt Law School.
Yeah.
How long did that last?
Oh,
Is it 2 years or 3 years?
27 months.
27 months.
I graduated in January of 1950. I entered in September of 47, but I went straight through, so to speak, including the summer months.
Were there some classmates that you remember from your class that were just friends of yours that you've kept up with over the years?
Cecil Brandstetter. Dick LaRoche, was my partner. He was in that class. He had gotten sick and missed a quarter or semester or something. He graduated, I think, in the same year, but later in the summer. And Dick and I formed that partnership that lasted for 16 years in Murfreesboro.
Were there any lawyers, Chancellor, that you knew before you went to law school that you kind of looked up to or that kind of mentored you?
No, my family didn't look up to lawyers. They didn't think anything at all of lawyers. A lawyer was something that they didn't approve of, but they never told me what to do, and that's what I chose to do.
And so you and Dick LaRoche had your own firm,
Yeah.
I think from 49 to 74.
From 49 to 74, yeah. 49 to 69, that's when Dick got a divorce and remarried in 69.
And what kind of practice did you do back then? What was your specialty, or did you have one?
We did everything that there was to do, including represent murders if we could, if they had any money, or well, we got assigned to one bad case of murder, I thought. It's terrible. And we, of course, lost it. He went to the pen. I don't remember what happened to him, but we did everything that there was to do. See, we were 19th and 20th lawyers in Murfreesboro. There are 140-something now. And we were 19th and 20th.
Now, also during that time, though, in the 50s, you weren't just involved in practicing law, but you also helped bring some different industry here to Murfreesboro.
Well, I joined the Chamber of Commerce Industrial Committee, and I worked for them for 10 years, free of charge. And the biggest one that we got, and that came the year I was chairman of the Industrial Committee of the Chamber of Commerce, was Samsonite, and that was a great one. I lost some friends because Samsonite was planning on going to Fayetteville. They had made their arrangements to move from Detroit to Fayetteville, and they came back through Murfreesboro from Fayetteville after I found out they were down there, and called them and asked them to stop in Murfreesboro. And they stopped and they said, we'll take 100 acres right here at $1,000 an acre if you can buy that. And I bought it with money from the Murfreesboro Bank and Trust Company, put it in my name, and then they sent me the money and I transferred it to Samsonite. That's a lot of this, that, and the other that you do when you working like that.
And you also helped, you mentioned Mid-South Bank, which I think is now SunTrust, but you played a big role in the development of Mid-South Bank here in Rutherford County too.
No, I didn't.
You just kept money over there?
Yes, I did, but it's very little, and they didn't appreciate my business at all, and that's the reason that Dick and I participated in the forming of the First National Bank of Murfreesboro. Later we joined First Tennessee, and we're still with First Tennessee.
And I think you served on the board of directors at First Tennessee Bank for a while, didn't you?
Yes, number of years. I don't remember how many, but number of years.
Do you remember any certain case that kind of stands out during your career when you were practicing law?
Yeah.
Which one? Just give me one.
One. This fella came to the office and he had a perfect case as he told it to me, and I took notes, and then asked him to come back in, and he repeated his situation. I thought it was very sound, but it didn't fit together. It didn't fit together. And I kept telling him that. We went over 2 or 3 times in the office, and then as we walked to the courthouse, the day of the trial, we went over it going. Then he got on the stand, and testified, and the lawyer on the other side examined him, and he held up with the whole story. And then when the lawyer on the other side got through and I had examined him, I said to him, "Step down." And he sort of did this. And then he sat back and said, "Judge, to tell you the truth," and he filled it in where it just fit perfectly. And we lost the case, of course. But I'll never forget that.
Now, during the mid-'50s, you had a big event in your life. You found a good woman who wanted to share her life with you.
Yeah.
Could you tell us a little bit about her and how y'all met?
Well, I went to see my younger sister who was working for the University of Missouri as a dietitian. And Oreen Cowan lived in the apartment next door to them. And Adeline, my sister, introduced me to Oreen, and I liked her, so I kept going back out there. And finally, she came to the University of Tennessee to get her master's degree, so that shortened my travel time. And after she'd been there for 3 or 4 months, we got married in December of 1956, and she came to Murfreesboro to live with me. And she never did get her master's degree. She started raising babies.
Did she enjoy Murfreesboro?
Oh, yeah, she loved it. Yeah, very much.
And something that I wanted to be sure and mention was that you served in the General Assembly in the mid-'60s.
Well, yeah, I ran for and was elected for that General Assembly. But, you know, at that time, the Supreme Court of the United States had said one man, one vote. And I thought highly of that. But the Supreme Court of the United States had tried twice already. This was the 3rd time you got to reapportion Tennessee. And Jared Maddox, who was the Speaker of the Senate, appointed me as chairman, if you can imagine, a freshman as chairman of the reapportionment committee for the Senate. So I worked it out according to the count that had been, and Rigamotlo and I were put in the same district according to my count. And so I took it to Riga first, so nobody else would know about it. And Riga said, "That's all right, Whitney, I don't ever plan to run again." He changed his mind and beat me twice after that. But I served for 2 years in the state senate.
And so you ran twice for the state senate, one time?
I won once.
Oh, you ran 3 times, didn't you?
Yeah, I ran. I had run for the Senate before, and Ben Carr had beaten me. That is, during 1952, I think it was. But that's the story.
And ever since then, though, throughout your political career and throughout your career as a lawyer, you've been involved in state politics in Tennessee, haven't you?
If you can count it, every Democrat that has ever run has had my support.
And so then, in 1974, you decided did you run for chancellor, or did you get appointed to chancellor?
No, I ran for it.
And was there an opening, or how did that happen?
I ran for it, and there was no opposition in 74. Then some fellow in Nashville came up here and came to see me and said, "I'd like to practice law in Murfreesboro." I encouraged him. So 4 years later, I'm talking about 8 years later, in 1980, Would it be 80? Yeah. No, 82.
No, it was 82.
82.
Mm-hmm.
He ran against me after I encouraged him to come to Murfreesboro.
If I remember correctly, you did pretty well in that race, didn't you?
Yes, I got 2/3 of the vote. He got 1/3, but he had support of, well, the sheriff's dead now. Some of the others are still living, so I won't name them all. But
now, didn't he move? What happened to him after you beat him?
He moved to Texas.
That's right.
Took bankruptcy and moved to Texas.
What made you decide that you wanted to be a judge in 1974?
Chancellor Templeton was once asked that question, and he said, "Oh, I just like the sound of it." I don't know. I just figured I could do a good job of it, and I ran and was elected.
Now, the legislature in Tennessee just passed a bill to raise the pay of trial judges and appellate judges in Tennessee. I think it's going up to $140,000 for trial judges. In 1974, what was your compensation?
17,500. That's the way I remembered. But we never did get that living wage that you all have now.
And during those years of being chancellor, are there any cases that you remember specifically that stand out that you'd like to share with us?
No, there's one that always amused me. I was trying it in Woodbury, and she kept talking about her as a divorce case, you know. Oh, you were one of those participants that caused me to hear all the divorce cases while I was circuit judge. At any rate, she kept talking about these former husbands, and I said, "How many times have you been married?" She said, "If you grant me this divorce, it'll be 18. And I believe her. I don't know whether she's telling the truth or not, but nevertheless, that always sort of amused me.
What were the best parts of serving as a judge or a chancellor for you?
The best part comes after it's over with. If you've been fair with the people I was fair with, they'll come back and tell you about it when they meet you on the street and things like that. I enjoyed being a judge. It gave you a variety of things to think about. There's one case is not like another case, but the same law applies to them all. But being fair with them, I'm thrilled. I usually cry when somebody's nice to me and says, "I remember so-and-so." That's the best part of it.
What was the toughest part for you?
Getting it. Getting the judge. It's a hard case when you're running and somebody's really after you and they have some support. But
the day-to-day work that you did, were there things that were more difficult, maybe certain type of cases or the time schedule? Or
writing opinions was difficult for me, but I did a lot of it. And one or two of them made the Bound Buckram cases. I'm proud of the one that the Supreme Court affirmed, and those that they don't affirm, I don't remember the name of them, but the one that increased the salaries of the judges, I tried that case. That was back when we were paid like that $17,500, or maybe it's $30,000 by that time, I don't know. At any rate, I got designated because I was outside of the retirement course as it was then. I couldn't ever draw that. And
were there judges when you first went on the bench that were kind of mentors to you that you looked up to and maybe helped you in the judicial conference?
oh, Judge Lee is the greatest man that ever lived. He was chancellor for our district. And
Was that from Bedford County?
yeah,
And his son,
Judge Lee, no, Judge Lee was not from Bedford County. He was
well, I know. Let me ask you this: I know that you were involved in the judicial conference, and that you attended those meetings regularly and stuff like that. Were there friends that you enjoyed spending time with?
oh yeah, Denny Bell. Denny Bell is, I consider him a very close friend. There were several others, but Denny and I always roomed together. And
I've heard stories about that you went out to the National Judicial College in I think it was Reno, Nevada.
that's right.
Is that right?
That's right.
And did you only go out there once?
One time, stayed a month. It's a great case, a great course, I mean, for judges. It gives you a cross-section of the United States from the standpoint of association with the other judges. I went one Sunday morning. I got up real early, about daylight, and went down to see. I wanted to see all those one-armed bandits.
And did
Not busy.
yeah?
And the room was full. It was at daylight, and the room was full of people pulling those things. There wasn't a nickel machine available for a poor boy to play.
You kind of had a reputation as being expecting lawyers to be prepared when they came to your court. Was that kind of your philosophy?
You've been there.
Yes, sir, I have.
Oh my, yeah. I thought it's the duty of them, not only to work up the facts, but the law, and give it to the judge or chancellor. And I hope I impressed some of them. Some I didn't impress. I could name those, but you know them. So
There's one attorney, I think, who may be a judge in Nashville that had a run-in with you about some kind of ring. Could you kind of tell us that?
Carol
that
Solomon, she is a judge in Nashville.
Tell us that story, please, sir.
She represented the boy, and during the trial, this is a plea arrangement that they had worked out with the Attorney General. During the trial, Guy Dodson said, now, don't you have a diamond ring of so-and-so and so-and-so? He named her. I didn't know who it was, and she said, yes, I do. Well, she's entitled to that back, isn't she? Yes. And fortunately, I said, put it in the order. So the order came in that she was to return the, well, Carol didn't do that. So we went through an awful lot of correspondence and telephone calls. Finally, we had her served with process, and she came with the service of process. And Guy Dodson put her on the stand and started asking her questions. And she said, it's a beautiful day for a drive from Nashville up here. We enjoyed it so much. Had nothing to do with the question. And she went on like that with Tommy Rot. And finally, Guy said, Chancellor, it's up to you. And so I started the same process of asking her question. She responded to me in a similar manner. And there was a deputy there, and I said, Sheriff, take her to jail and keep her there until I get the diamond ring.
They got the diamond ring back, didn't you?
About an hour.
Okay.
And they brought it home. But she was in jail.
At Chancellor, you worked through 1990 as a chancellor here in
Yeah.
Rutherford County,
Right,
and then retired in 1990.
right.
And what did you do between 1990 and 1994?
I sat at
93?
home, and I almost went crazy sitting at home. No wife to tell me what to do, and nobody else wanted to, so I sat at home. And the designee of the governor called me in and started asking me a question about would I accept appointment. And I said yes before he finished.
And that was there was a new judgeship created in 1993 here in this
Right.
judicial district,
Right.
Division 3.
Right. And I accepted that, and I enjoyed being a criminal judge as well as being a chancellor. But the criminality of that was that all the judges wanted me to try the divorce cases. They were, oh, it was terrible then. I'm talking about the disputes. They try to divide up the children. You're familiar with that. It was pitiful.
And really, that's what, from 1993 until August of 1994, that's really what you did a majority of divorce cases. Is
About
that right?
1,500 of them. Yeah, yeah. It's approximately that number. I was doing about 100 a month, and it's terrible. Divorce cases are, especially with children. Dividing up, giving the wife half, and the husband half, although the husband produced it all. That's no pain to me. I think a woman that has stayed at home and looked after things is entitled to half. So that is my philosophy, and everybody, I won't say everybody, I don't think you resented it, because you didn't have a lot to divide up, but you didn't get a divorce by me. Nevertheless, that was my philosophy, and that wasn't painful to me, and everybody knew it. They teased me about it.
And then in 94, I think you retired again, but you didn't really retire. You kept on working.
Rick Mansfield and David Bragg took me to lunch one day and said, "Do you want to join us in our partnership?" And I said yes, but I didn't know they were going to spend all their time on title searches and closing loans. And that's what they principally do. I won't say they're not good lawyers in other things, but I didn't like that. And I refused, and I've been practicing law by myself, but with them there, I mean as partners, but we don't share in their income. They do a tremendous volume of business.
And y'all's office is located on the square here in Murfreesboro.
Yes, yes.
And I didn't want to leave out another important part of your life. You and your wife had two great children, right?
Well, we had two children.
Tell us their names, and I think you got some grandchildren too.
Whitney Jr. has two children, both of them red-haired children, and they're beautiful things, but they're too fat, and I've tried to tell their mother that, but she doesn't pay any attention to me. And Amy, you know Amy, Amy is brilliant, and she's a hard worker, and she's very conscientious, and she loves me, and she looks after me. She came back from Tulsa, Oklahoma after being out there. Kevin quit optometry business.
And Kevin's Amy's husband.
Yeah. And they have two children, Ben and Shannon. Shannon is 13, Ben's 11. And I have lots of attention from them. They're nice children.
They seem to really like you. What do they call you?
Opa.
Opa.
Yeah.
And
Opa.
so Amy's been back in town for, has it been a year already?
2.
2 years. Good. And then could you kind of tell us about you've been involved in a lot of community type work, helping charities and those type things over your years here in Rutherford County. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
I've done everything I could for everybody in these charities. I was once chairman of the Red Cross when Ms. Mukes was the principal operator of it. I reckon I ought to mention the foundation, MTSU Foundation. Dean Beasley came to my office one day and said, Randy Wood wants to give $40,000.
Now tell our listeners when that conversation took place. Was that
in December of 1961.
Right.
And we got together a charter, a corporate charter for that, and I took it down personally to the Secretary of State, and he approved it, if I'm not mistaken, on December the 29th. And on the 30th of December, it was recorded in Murfreesboro, Tennessee.
Could you kind of tell the listeners what the foundation is and what that charter is used for?
Well, the foundation simply begs money for the benefit of the faculty and the students. And it has raised since 1961. I got it approved in 62 so that Randy could get the benefit of his $40,000 gift in 1961, and he could take it off of his tax return in 1942.
62.
62, excuse me.
Now,
At
that
any
was
rate, they have raised $58 million. That is their value on the last accounting that I've had of it. And every president has been very industrious toward raising money. Now, I don't know who gave that money. I didn't. But there are a lot of people that think that I gave it, and I wish I had. But I don't have it to give.
But I think, wasn't that charter the very first in the state of Tennessee where somebody created a foundation?
Oh, yes, it was. And then I went to the Senate, and Jared Maddox, who was the Speaker of the Senate, came to me one day and said, Whitney, how did you get a foundation at MTSU? And I told him, and he said, well, will you support one for all of the schools? And I said, yes. So Jared Maddox and I joined hands and got a approval of a charter for every higher educational institution in the state of Tennessee. And most of them have them. The one in Cookville had 9 the last time I checked on it, 9 different charters. I don't know why, because all of it's supposed to flow through the foundation for the school, for each unit of the school. I think now there's some effort to get each dean to solicit money, but we have an agreement that it will all come through the foundation now. I'm told that some of the money actually goes just direct to MTSU. I don't know that, but I haven't bothered with that.
And if I drive around on the campus over there on Middle Tennessee State University now, I think there's a building named for you.
Wood and Stegall.
And what's that building? What do they use that building for?
Solicited money.
Well, I know, but that's the Foundation House building. And it's named after you and Randy Woods.
Yeah, it's the Foundation Center for raising money. And they have a very pleasant and active staff over there. Now, they could do more, but every once in a while we get cheated a little bit by somebody. For instance, Russell Puckett willed the $2 million to the foundation. And when we opened his lockbox, he had his wife's name on the stock certificates, so she got the $2 million, although she didn't know where she was and what she was doing.
You still seem very involved over at Middle Tennessee State University. You still go over there and participate in a lot of things over there?
Everything I can.
And you've seen great changes here in Murfreesboro and Rutherford County over the last 50 years since you got out of Vanderbilt. Could you kind of talk about those changes that you've seen?
The industry that we have here is the basis of it. I was a participant in the industrial committee of the Chamber of Commerce and did all that I could for the university, but I can't imagine the success that foundation has had, and I'm very proud of it.
And can you tell me about the change you've seen in the legal profession during your career? Good or bad, whatever you think.
I don't want to talk about lawyers, but we could make a deal when I came here with another lawyer, and he would stand hitched. Once you shook hands on it, it was over with. And everybody recognized that. You can't do that anymore. You got to select those that you know will stay hitched on the deal. And I'm sorry that prevailed across the United States, so I'm told. And it's very upsetting to me to think about that, but I think that lawyers should be more careful. I'll put it like that.
And with the judiciary, I know the pay started at $17,500 when you got on there, but besides the pay getting better, how has the judiciary changed, or that you've observed over these last 20 years, 20, 30 years?
Well, they're smarter. They are better than we were. They have better laws. I really think that it's improving. I hate to say that after being critical, but that's my situation. I believe in the law, and I'm very happy to say that I think we're improving.
And so today, as Whitney Stegall, kind of tell me about your schedule. What goes on in your life every day? I know I see your car in front of the law office, but tell me what else you do every day, or what you do at the law office as well.
I still have two cases. One is Russell Puckett's that the $2 million went to his mother, and I can't close out his estate. And it's one mistake after another, and I'm responsible for those mistakes, but I didn't make them. And I promised Tom Blair, he's one of Bubba Murphy's football players that came here from high school down in Lawrenceburg, and we've been friends since then. He got here before 1937 as a freshman, and he graduated. We were friends then, and we still friends. He went to the Navy during the World War, and he came back here. And he chose me as his lawyer, and I told him I'd stay with him till one of the other of us died.
And I know every morning I look at, if I'm going to go over to City Cafe, I always see you sitting there with Dr. Womack and about 2 or 3 other guys. Can you tell me about, are those friends of yours, or what's your impression of those guys that you seem to share breakfast with a lot?
I do. I share it with them, and I share my time and their time with them. They've been mighty nice to me. Dr. Womack is a brilliant fella.
And he's a professor over at Middle Tennessee State University.
Has been. He's been a teacher for 48 years, I'll put it like that. And Ross Spielman, I accuse him every time I get an opportunity of running the university. I don't know how he always gets invited to every function that they always have, and he's there and knows the details of it and how it occurred and everything.
And
so
he used to work at State Farm, I think. Now he's retired from State Farm.
Yeah, he's retired from State Farm.
And who else? Who else is there that you...
George Gardner. George is a great fellow. He's retired from State Farm. Excuse me.
And Mr. Gardner was very involved with the MTSU Foundation as well.
Oh yes. He got out and asked for that money that came in. He worked his heart out on it. And his part of it already amounts to over $100,000. That is, he's set up a scholarship fund of over $100,000, and I think it exceeds $150,000. And I'm told, but I don't know anything about it, that Randy Wood is still giving. And when Randy gives, it's a big chunk of money. And you know, Ms. Miller, I'm sorry I didn't know her, but she left us $20 million.
And Miss Miller, and it was Mr. Miller and Mrs. Miller gave that money. And what did they use all that money that MTSU got for that?
For horses.
Right.
We built the arena out there that's beautiful, and it's gorgeous. It's a wonderful horse show, but we don't have enough attendance, and I don't understand that.
And that's the Miller Coliseum that came from the Miller money.
Yeah.
Chancellor, I think there'll be lawyers and your grandchildren and great-grandchildren that look at this tape one day and are amazed by the wonderful life that you've lived and the lives you've touched. Can you, when you're gone and getting your great reward one day, what do you want people to say about Whitney Stegall?
Goodbye.
Thank you, Chancellor.
Yeah.